Karen was stealing her neighbor's mail daily, causing her trouble because she disliked her due to her skin color. But her jaw dropped when she realized the woman worked for the FBI. Her fingers trembled as they brushed the cool metal edge of the mailbox, the faint creak of its hinge slicing through the humid afternoon air. Karen's breath hitched, a bead of sweat trickling down her spine as she plunged her hand deeper. The stolen envelopes crinkling against her palm. The paper edges bit into her skin, a sharp little thrill that mirrored the one coiling tight in her chest. She didn't hear the soft crunch of footsteps on the gravel behind her. Not at first. The forbidden rush consumed her, a dark current surging through her veins, her lips parting as she exhaled a shaky, triumphant sigh. She was untouchable, a shadow slipping through the mundane monotony of suburban life. Her neighbor's secrets now hers to devour. The envelopes were a treasure trove, bills, letters, a postcard with a palm tree print from some distant vacation she'd never take. Each one was a glimpse into lives she'd never live, a rebellion against the suffocating sameness of Meadowbrook Lane. Karen had always been the observer, the one who noticed the flicker of curtains, or the way Mr. Henderson's limp grew worse in the rain. But this was different. This was power. Her fingers tightened around the paper, her nails digging crescent moons into the pulp as she imagined the weight of their contents. A late mortgage notice, a love letter gone sour, a medical bill hinting at something dire. She didn't open them. Not yet. The anticipation was sweeter than the reveal. Then came the voice, low and smooth, cutting through her haze like a blade. "Looking for something?" it asked, dripping with quiet menace. Karen's heart slammed against her ribs, her body jerking as she spun around, the envelope slipping from her grasp to scatter across the cracked pavement. There she stood, her neighbor, tall, poised, her dark eyes glinting with something dangerous, something Karen couldn't name. The woman's lips curved faintly, a predator's smile, and Karen's bravado flared like a dying ember. "Mind your business," she snapped, her voice sharp, defiant, but trembling at the edges. The words felt hollow even as they left her mouth. A child's tantrum against a storm. The neighbor didn't flinch. Her hand dipped into her pocket, slow and deliberate. And Karen's world tilted as the woman pulled out a slim leather wallet. It flipped open with a practiced flick, revealing a glinting badge. FBI. The air thickened, suffocating, as Karen's bravado crumbled into ash. "I suggest you stop tampering with federal property," the agent said, her tone firm, unyielding, each word a shackle snapping shut. "Or we can finish this conversation downtown." Karen's knees buckled, the stolen mail forgotten at her feet, as the neighborhood's quiet facade began to crack. The moment lingered, heavy and electric. The silence between them stretching taut like a wire, ready to snap. Karen's pale fingers hovered over the fallen envelopes, her breath shallow, her mind racing for an escape that wasn't there. The agent stood motionless, her gaze pinning Karen in place, a quiet storm brewing beneath her calm exterior. The suburban street, with its manicured lawns and pastel houses, seemed to hold its breath, the distant hum of a lawnmower the only sound daring to intrude. Karen's lips parted, a stammered excuse forming. "I was just checking for a mix-up." But it died as the agent's eyes narrowed, daring her to speak. Then, with a clumsy lurch, Karen stumbled backward, her heels catching on the curb. The envelopes lay abandoned, their edges fluttering in the faint breeze, as she retreated toward her own house across the street. The agent didn't move, didn't chase, just watched, her presence a looming shadow that swallowed Karen whole. The door to Karen's pristine colonial slammed shut behind her, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the stillness. Inside, she pressed her back against the wood, her chest heaving, her fingers clawing at the lace curtains as she peered out. The agent was still there, bending gracefully to gather the scattered mail, her movements deliberate, almost sensual in their precision. Karen's stomach twisted, a knot of fear and fascination she couldn't untangle. She stayed there, frozen against the door, until the agent straightened, tucking the envelopes under her arm. The woman glanced toward Karen's house, her eyes locking with the slit in the curtains for a heartbeat, an eternity before turning and walking back to her own home. The click of her front door closing was a guillotine's fall, severing the thread of Karen's courage. She slid to the floor, her knees drawn up, her breath ragged. The stolen thrill was gone, replaced by a cold, creeping dread that settled into her bones. The first week after the confrontation was a study in avoidance. Karen kept her blinds shut, her front door locked, her car parked in the garage instead of the driveway. A break from her usual habit of leaving it out to signal her presence. She'll herself, it was temporary. A chance to regroup, but the truth gnawed at her. She was hiding. The neighborhood's rhythm continued without her. Mrs. Henderson's daily shuffle to the mailbox, the Thompsons' dog barking at the delivery truck. But it felt off, incomplete, like a song missing a note. She watched it all from the slit between her curtains, her fingers twitching with the urge to step outside to reclaim her place. But Nia's shadow loomed too large, her house a silent sentinel across the street. Nia, that was her name, Karen had learned, overheard in a snatched conversation between Mrs. Henderson and the mailman, a month ago. Nia Carter. She'd moved in 6 weeks earlier, her arrival marked by a single U-Haul and a quiet efficiency that unsettled Karen. No welcome casseroles, no neighborhood barbecues, just a woman who kept her lawn trimmed and her blinds half-drawn. Karen had pegged her as aloof, maybe lonely, a perfect target for her little game. Now she saw the truth. Nia wasn't prey, she was the hunter. Karen's days blurred into a haze of paranoia. She stopped watering her bojan, letting their pink petals wilt under the unrelenting sun. She avoided the mailbox entirely, letting her own bills pile up, unclaimed. The thought of touching that metal box again sent a shiver through her. A visceral memory of Nia's voice, her badge, her eyes. Sleep came in fits, fractured by dreams of handcuffs and shadowed figures at her door. She'd wake, drenched in sweat, and stumble to the window, peering out to see if Nia's porch light was on. It always was, a steady amber glow that mocked her. By the 5th day, the isolation was unbearable. Karen paced her living room, the hardwood creaking under her bare feet, her reflection flickering in the framed photos on the mantel. Her husband Tom stared back from a decade-old snapshot, smiling, oblivious, before the divorce had carved her life into before and after. The kids were gone too, off to college, leaving her alone in this too-big house with its 2 quiet rooms. She'd started the mail thing months ago, a petty rebellion against the emptiness, a way to feel connected. It wasn't about the secrets. Not really. It was about the act, the risk, the proof she still existed. But Nia had changed the rules. On the 8th day, Karen cracked. The walls of her house felt like they were closing in, the air stale with her own fear. She needed out. She showered for the first time in days, the hot water scalding away the grime of her self-imposed exile. She dressed carefully. Jeans, a crisp white blouse, a cardigan to soften the edges, arming herself with normalcy. The car keys jangled in her hand as she stepped into the garage, her pulse quickening. She'd drive to the grocery store, buy something trivial, milk, bread, anything to prove she wasn't a prisoner in her own life. The garage door rumbled open, and sunlight flooded in, blinding her for a moment. She squinted, easing the car out, her eyes darting to Nia's house. The porch light was off, the windows dark. Relief washed over her, fleeting but sweet. She pulled onto the street, the engines hum a lifeline, and glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing. No one. She was free. The grocery store was a mile away, a squat brick building flanked by a parking lot dotted with minivans and sedans. Karen parked near the entrance, her hands still gripping the wheel as she steadied her breathing. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed, the air cool and antiseptic. She grabbed a basket, wandering the aisles with no real purpose, tossing in a loaf of bread, a carton of eggs, a bag of apples. Normal things. Safe things. She lingered by the magazines, flipping through a glossy cover without reading it, her mind still across the street, replaying Nia's voice. Karen? She flinched, nearly dropping the basket. Mrs. Henderson stood behind her, her frail frame wrapped in a floral shawl, her watery blue eyes peering up with concern. Haven't seen you around lately, the old woman said, her voice thin but warm. Everything all right? Karen forced a smile. Her lips tight. Fine, just busy. You know how it is. Mrs. Henderson nodded, unconvinced, her gnarled fingers clutching a coupon booklet. Well, you take care. That new woman, Nia, she's been asking about you. The words hit like a punch. Karen's smile faltered, her throat closing. Asking what? Oh, just if you were okay. Said she saw you trip the other day. Wanted to check in? Mrs. Henderson chuckled, oblivious to the storm brewing in Karen's chest. Nice of her, don't you think? Karen mumbled something. A thank you. A goodbye, and turned away, her basket trembling in her grip. Sonia had noticed her stumble. Nia was watching. The grocery store felt smaller, the lulls pressing in again. She paid in a daze, the cashier's chatter a distant drone, and hurried back to her car. The drive home was a blur, her eyes flicking to the mirrors, half expecting Nia's shadow to materialize. When she pulled into the garage, Nia's porch light was on again. The second week was worse. Karen's brief taste of freedom had backfired, stoking her paranoia into a wildfire. Mrs. Henderson's words looped in her mind. Nia asking, Nia watching, and every creak of the house became a footstep, every shadow a threat. She stopped sleeping altogether. Her night spent hunched on the couch with a mug of cold coffee, the TV flickering mute infomercials she didn't watch. The envelopes haunted her too, their absence a void she couldn't fill. She'd lost them, lost the game, and Nia held all the cards. On the 10th night, she saw her. It was past midnight, the street bathed in the sodium glow of streetlights. Karen stood at her window, the curtains parted just enough to see when Nia emerged from her house. She wore dark jeans and a jacket, her movements fluid as she crossed the lawn to the mailbox. Karen's breath caught as Nia paused, her head tilting slightly toward Karen's house. She couldn't see Nia's eyes, but she felt them. A weight, pressing through the glass. Nia lingered there, a silhouette against the night, then turned and walked back inside. The porch lights stayed on. Karen didn't sleep that night, either. By the third week something shifted. The fear didn't fade. It hardened. Erin was tired of hiding, tired of the shadow Nia cast over her life. She'd done nothing wrong, not really. A few envelopes, a harmless quirk, and Nia couldn't prove anything, badge or not. The defiance flickered back, a spark in the ashes, and Karen fed it. She started small, leaving the blinds up during the day, parking the car in the driveway again. She even waved at Mrs. Henderson one morning, a brittle smile on her face, daring the world to notice. Nia noticed. It was a Tuesday, the air crisp with the first hint of fall. Karen stepped outside to retrieve her own mail, her first trip to the mailbox since that day. The metal was cold under her fingers, the hinge squeaking as she opened it. Her heart thudded, but she kept her chin up, her movements deliberate. She pulled out a stack of flyers and bills, flipping through them as she turned back toward the house. Nia was there, leaning against her own porch railing, a mug in her hand. Steam curled from it, catching the morning light. Feeling brave? She called, her voice carrying that same smooth menace. Karen froze, the mail crinkling in her grip. I live here, she shot back, her tone sharper than she intended. I can check my own mail. Nia's lips twitched. That predator's smile again. Good for you. She took a sip from the mug, her eyes never leaving Karen's. Just don't get any ideas. The threat hung there, unspoken but clear. Karen's defiance wavered, but she held her ground, staring back until Nia turned and disappeared inside. The victory was small, bitter, but it was hers. The weeks stretched into a strange stalemate. Karen reclaimed pieces of her routine, gardening, grocery runs, a cautious wave to the Thompsons. But Nia was always there, a constant pressure at the edge of her vision. They didn't speak again, not directly, but their encounters were a dance of glances and silences. Nia mowing her lawn while Karen watered her flowers. Nia jogging past as Karen unloaded groceries. Each moment was a test, a question. How far would Karen push? How long would Nia watch? Karen started keeping a journal, scribbling her thoughts in a spiral notebook she hid under her mattress. It was a release, a way to process the fear and the fascination. She wrote about Nia's badge, her poise, the way she seemed to see through everything. She wrote about the envelopes too, the ones she'd lost and the ones she still craved. The act of writing grounded her, gave her control, but it also fed the obsession. Nia wasn't just a neighbor anymore. She was a puzzle, a challenge, a mirror reflecting Karen's own unraveling. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in bruised purple streaks, Karen saw something new. She was at the window again, habit now when a black sedan pulled into Nia's driveway. Two men stepped out, suits crisp despite the hour. Their movements clipped and purposeful. Nia met them at the door, her expression unreadable. They spoke briefly, heads bent close, then vanished inside. The sedan stayed for an hour before leaving, its taillights fading into the dark. Karen's pen flew across the page that night, her theories spilling out. FBI business. A case. A stakeout. Maybe Nia wasn't here for her at all. Maybe Meadowbrook Lane was a cover, a quiet place to lie low. The thought was a lifeline, a way to shrink Nia's shadow. But it didn't explain the eyes, the badge, the way Nia seemed to know. A month after the confrontation, Karen broke again, not into fear but into action. She couldn't live like this, suspended between dread and defiance. She needed answers. She waited until late afternoon, when Nia's car was gone. Off to wherever she went, when she wasn't haunting the street. Karen slipped outside, her pulse a drumbeat, and crossed to Nia's mailbox. Her hands shook as she opened it, the hinge creaking in accusation. Inside was a single envelope, plain white, no address. She snatched it, her breath hitching, and darted back to her house. Inside, she tore it open, her fingers clumsy with adrenaline. A folded note slipped out, the handwriting sharp and precise. "I see you too." Karen dropped it, her gasp echoing in the silent room. The note lay there, a taunt, a trap, a truth. She stumbled to the window, yanking the curtains wide. Nia's car was back, parked in the driveway, the porch light blazing, and there she was, standing on the lawn, staring straight at Karen's house. Their eyes met through the glass. A current snapping between them, and Nia smiled, that slow, dangerous curve. Karen didn't sleep that night either. The note sat on her kitchen table, untouched, a weight she couldn't lift. The neighborhood's quiet facade had shattered, and she was caught in the wreckage, a shadow no longer untouchable. Nia, meanwhile, went about her days with mechanical precision. She left at 8 a.m., returned at 6 p.m., her SUV gliding in and out of the driveway like clockwork. To the untrained eye, she was just another commuter. But Karen knew better now. She'd seen the badge, felt its weight in the air between them. Nia was no office drone, she was something else, something dangerous. Karen spent hours piecing it together, her mind spinning theories: undercover cop, private investigator, maybe even a spy. The envelopes offered clues, but she'd burned them in a fit of panic that first night, the ashes scattered in her backyard compost heap. Now she had nothing but memory, and memory was a fickle thing. The neighborhood wasn't content to let it rest. Mrs. Henderson, with her bird-watching alibi, became the unofficial herald, recounting the showdown to anyone who'd listen. "She had a badge, tell you," she'd say, her voice trembling with excitement. As she leaned over her fence to Mrs. Thompson, Karen went white as a sheet, thought she'd faint right there. Mrs. Thompson, a plump woman with a penchant for knitting, nodded sagely, her needles clicking. Always knew Karen poked her nose where it didn't belong. Serves her right. By Wednesday the story had grown legs. Karen had been arrested, some said. Others swore Nia was a secret agent hunting a serial killer. The truth didn't matter. The drama Karen heard the whispers through her walls, the phone calls she didn't answer, the text from her book club she left unread. "Did something happen with that new woman? Heard you had a run-in? Everything okay?" She ignored them all, her pride a fragile shield, but solitude bred restlessness, and by Friday, she couldn't stand it anymore. She needed air, needed to see, so she slipped out at dusk, her hoodie pulled low, and took the long way around the block. Circling back to Nia's house, the mailbox stood there, taunting her, its black surface gleaming under the streetlight. She didn't touch it, God, no. But she lingered, her breath fogging in the cool air, her eyes tracing the ivy where the camera hid. She knew it was there now, could feel its gaze like a finger on her spine. Nia watched from her kitchen, the camera feed flickering on her laptop. She'd expected Karen to stay away, to lick her wounds in private, but here she was, hovering like a moth near a flame. It was almost pitiful, the way she stood there, caught between fear and fascination. Nia sipped her coffee, black, no sugar, and considered her next move. Arresting Karen was still an option, but it felt petty now, a waste of resources. She'd already filed a report with her supervisor, downplaying the incident as a local nuisance, but the violation lingered in her gut. This wasn't just about mail, it was about boundaries, about trust. Karen had crossed a line, and Nia needed her to know it wasn't forgotten. Karen hadn't always been this way. 12 years ago, when she and Mark moved to Willow Creek, she'd been different. Softer, hopeful. They'd bought the house with dreams of kids, a dog, the whole suburban package. She'd planted the roses herself, her hands caked with soil, Mark laughing as he hauled bags of mulch from the truck. But the kids never came. 2 miscarriages, then silence, and the dog died young, hit by a car on the main road. Mark drifted, his late nights at the office, stretching into weekends away, until the note and the suitcase ended it. The neighborhood had rallied at first, casseroles piling up on her counter, but pity soured into distance, and Karen hardened. She pruned her roses with surgical precision, joined the HOA, became the keeper of secrets, whose kid got into college, whose husband drank too much. It was power in a way, a currency she wielded to fill the void. The mail theft started small. A year after Mark left, a neighbor's credit card offer, left sticking out of a box, caught her eye. She'd taken it, shredded it, told herself it was a favor. Identity theft was a real threat. After all, but the rush stayed with her. A spark in the numbness. It grew from there. Coupons, catalogs, once a love letter from Mr. Peterson to a woman who wasn't his wife. She never kept them long, just enough to feel the weight of someone else's life in her hands. Nia's mail was different though, heavier, sharper, a siren call she couldn't resist. It wasn't just curiosity, it was defiance, a middle finger to the locked door across the street. Now, post-confrontation, that defiance curdled into shame. She avoided mirrors, afraid of the woman she'd see, pale, hollow, a thief unmasked. But shame didn't kill the hunger. It fed. She started watching Nia more closely, noting the time she left, the packages she received. None now, just a void where the mail used to be. She bought binoculars, cheap ones from the hardware store, and set them by the window, telling herself it was self-defense. If Nia was an agent, she could be dangerous. Karen needed to know, needed to protect herself. It was a lie, but a comforting one. Nia's life in Willow Creek was a carefully constructed facade. The assignment had come after a messy case in Chicago, undercover work that left her burned out, her cover blown, her partner injured. She'd requested something quieter, and the fraud ring fit the bill. Low stakes, low profile, a chance to breathe. Willow Creek was perfect on paper, small, unassuming, a place where no one asked questions. She'd rented the house under an alias, kept her badge hidden, her gun locked in a safe upstairs. The SUV was her one indulgence, a remnant of her old life. Its tinted windows a shield against prying eyes. Karen's interference was a wrinkle, but not the first. Nasia was used to civilians getting in the way, nosy landlords, chatty baristas, but this felt personal. The mail wasn't random, it was targeted, a deliberate breach. He'd run Karen's name through the system after the first theft, pulling up a thin file, no record, just a divorce 5 years back, a speeding ticket from 2019. On paper, Karen was nobody, a bored housewife, with too much time, but Nia knew better. Nobodies didn't steal mail with that kind of fervor. There was a story there, a wound, and Nia's training made her want to dig. She didn't. Though, not yet. The fraud case was heating up. Bank records showing a pattern, a name she recognized from an old file. And she couldn't afford distractions. Still, Karen stayed on radar, a blip she couldn't ignore. The camera stayed active, its footage a nightly ritual. Most nights, it caught nothing but leaves and the occasional raccoon. But when Karen appeared, hood up, eyes glinting, it was a jolt, a reminder of the game still in play. 2 weeks after the confrontation, Willow Creek's gossip mill churned anew. A package arrived at Nia's door, not mail, but a courier drop. A plain brown box with no return address. Karen saw it from her window, her binoculars fogging with her breath. She watched Nia sign for it, her posture stiff, her glance flicking toward Karen's house. It was deliberate, that look, a challenge. Karen's pulse quickened, her mind racing. What was in the box? Evidence? A weapon? She needed to know. She didn't dare approach the mailbox again, but the package gnawed at her. She started asking around, casual at first. Seen anything odd lately? But the neighbors were tight-lipped at their loyalty shifting to Nia. Mrs. Henderson, emboldened by her role as witness, took it further. She cornered Nia one morning, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. You're not really just a neighbor, are you? Nia smiled, deflecting. Just here to live quietly, ma'am. But the seed was planted. By evening, the street hummed with speculation. Karen seized the moment. If she couldn't get to Nia directly, she'd use the neighborhood. She called an emergency HOA meeting, citing safety concerns, and laid it on thick, a anger with secrets, a threat to their peace. She didn't name Nia, but the implication was clear. The room 10 folding chairs in the Thompsons' basement crackled with tension. Some nodded, others scoffed, but all eyes turned to Nia when she walked in. Uninvited, her presence a quiet storm. I hear there's talk, Nia said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Let's clear it up. I'm here to work, not to cause trouble. Anyone got questions? Ask, now. No one did. Not directly. Karen sat silent, her hands clenched, her plan backfiring. Nia's calm unraveled her accusations, left them limp. The meeting ended with awkward coughs and shuffled feet. But the thread between them tightened, its vibration louder now. The slow burn. A game of trust. Weeks passed, the standoff evolving. Karen stopped hiding, her roses tended again, her car back in the driveway. She waved at Nia once. A brittle gesture, and Nia nodded back. A truce of sorts. But the dance continued. Karen's binoculars, Nia's camera, glances traded like chess moves. The package remained a mystery, its contents locked behind Nia's door, a taunt Karen couldn't resist imagining. Nia's case closed quietly, a local accountant arrested, the fraud ring dismantled, but she stayed. Her lease renewed. Karen's thefts never resumed, but her hunger shifted. Her eyes tracking Nia not for mail, but for meaning. They were mirrors. In a way, Karen's chaos reflecting Nia's control, Nia's restraint echoing Karen's need. Willow Creek settled, its whispers fading, but between their houses, the story simmered. A slow burn waiting for the next spark.